Yeah, and believe me, it hurts sometimes when you have to do that, and you won't grow as hockey stick meteorically as some of the posers on Instagram posing in front of their Ferraris or something like that. But you will also be uh, 30 years into a career, or whatever, 27 years into a career, and still be doing it.
Welcome back to Last Life Ever. My name is Jeff Holst, and that is Jillian Sidoti. Jillian, I'm excited to be here today. Are you excited?
I am because we're actually going to be talking to an old friend of mine, Dan Millen, who I knew way back in the day as a booking agent at a club. And my husband even knew him, and he knew both of us separately before I even knew my husband. And he was in a band, and he's been in the army, and he owns like nightclubs now. And now we're going to talk to him about that because I know a lot of our listeners are always looking for different exciting businesses to get into. And so I'd really like to dive into that.
Hey, Dan, welcome to
Hey,
the show.
how's it going, guys?
And I guess I learned in the intro, I didn't know this before, you've actually known them since before Jillian was a Sidoti. So
Yes,
that's
I used to book a club, and Jillian's husband, Derek, played in a band that I booked many times. He used to have hair down to his bum, and he was like a free-flowing hippie rocker. And
So true.
and then Jillian also played in a band that was looking to get a gig at the club that I booked at the time, and
He roundly
unfortunately, I didn't give her
rejected
a
me
gig. I
several
rejected
times.
her.
well, Jillian,
It-
having heard you sing the Chattanooga Choo Choo, I can see why.
yeah, it was probably a wise choice on Dan's part in
Well, your
hindsight,
next
looking
project,
back.
you have a guaranteed gig. So,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I
but
appreciate
it's
that.
funny how worlds collide because I connected with Jillian from her work as an attorney, as a crowdfunding and real estate attorney, and I recognize that name from somewhere. I recognize her from somewhere, and boom, two plus two now equals five.
So, no, awesome, Dan.
Well,
It's
it is
super
great to
exciting.
have you on, and I do want to just jump right into this. So, back in the day, you were booking for a club. That's cool. What are you doing now? Like, what's going on in your world?
I am right now. I co-own a club in Foxborough, Massachusetts called Six String Grill and Stage, and then I produce probably about 100 to 125 musical events a year in venues as various as minor league ballparks to boats. I do party boats with where we load them on, get them drunk, and for 3 hours, and they all go crazy, and then we get them off, and then I. At any one given time, I am either a partner in or a booker for 2 to 3 different nightclubs, and they're mostly centered around Eastern Massachusetts and Southern New Hampshire. So it's fun. It's a little weird these days because I live in Atlanta now. I moved here to be with my wife, who also was my college sweetheart, who also doesn't know that she knows, but has met Jillian's husband as well
Oh,
because we were together during the time that I booked that club. So
oh wow.
uh,
That's awesome.
so I basically bounce between Boston or Atlanta, and I fly up to Boston and shake hands and kiss babies and chase musicians around, and then come back. Uh,
All right. So, besides meeting the Sidotis, clearly the most famous musicians you've ever worked with, besides meeting them,
Stop.
who who would you say is your favorite person that you ever worked with? Not like the best or most
ooh.
famous, but like who did you love working with?
I absolutely loved working with Slash,
Did
and
you
Slash.
really?
yes, and that it was earlier on in my career, and he was so super cool. I got a chance to do it, it was Slash's Snake Pit. If you Google that, you'll see how far back that was. But he showed up early, which is very rare for a musician, and was just hanging out at the bar with me and my intern, and we started drinking, we started having a great time, and I couldn't believe it. I was just hanging, chill with Slash, and he was so cool. Um, After the gig, he I had this velveteen jacket, which I still have in a closet somewhere, and it was just super cool, and it was one of my prized possessions. And he kept asking me, How much do you want for that jacket? That is the coolest jacket ever. How much do you want for it?" I let him wear it, and he wore it on stage, and I mean, it was just super cool.
Wow.
I have
That's
That's
met
amazing.
so
so many heroes of mine, and uh, I think he has been the coolest, and I think Bret Michaels from Poison has also been the coolest, but Slash
He's
by
not
far.
he seems like
so
a
for
genuinely
both of them.
nice
So
guy, right? Like he's
in
nice.
Yeah,
my life. But wow, like I can't even imagine hanging out with Slash. That sounds amazing. The only famous person I've ever hung out with is Jillian. So
Stop it. All right, listen, I want to get down to brass tacks because Jeff and I always had a dream of owning a tiki bar on a
did
beach
we have
somewhere.
that dream?
We did. It was like a fever dream, but we did have
We always
the
had this dream.
dream. Yeah.
I actually I feel like this might be your dream, Jillian.
No, we talked about this. Stop it. So,
We did talk about it, but I don't know about it being like a huge dream of mine.
it's a
Jeff, you
huge
can
dream.
show up every now and again as a guest bartender and make old fashions.
We've
Well,
even
yeah, I mean, I could do that, but my dream would be that Jillian has a tiki bar that gives me free rum, and I just sit in the corner of the bar and meet people.
You hold
listen.
court.
You could hold court. I mean, that's good marketing. That's how we get people to stay at the bar. Listen, that's
Do
that's
you
a good way to
know
work.
that there are probably still some bars? I haven't seen this in a long time, but there are probably still some bars that have a bar philosopher. Um, in my early days in Boston, I lived in a house with like nine other people, and one of them was a bar philosopher. They would pay him
Really?
$100 a night, and all he could drink, and he would just sit and make conversations with people and
I
talk
own a
about
dream job.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to scratch my head and go, wow. And I mean, obviously, you have to be an extrovert, and you have to be able to carry on some sort of an intelligent conversation and attune that conversation to the room, which I probably would have an issue with. But he was just so good at it. And
Mm.
back in the day when rent was $300 a month, and you could pretty much live comfortably three times a week, making $100 a night. That is what he did for a living. So
I could see myself doing that. I do that now and I don't get paid
yeah,
for it.
it's
Yeah.
there for you, Jeff.
So I'll be operations and all you have to do is sit there and drink
And
and
be the
talk
bar
to people.
philosopher.
Yeah, be the buffer. I mean, it's a form of
But
marketing,
but
right?
but if are we gonna have like cool like drink tricks or something like Tom Cruise and cocktails like spinning bottles and stuff? Like
Well,
I might learn that too just for fun.
I we'll get to that. Don't worry. But what I want to know from Dan, because I mean he's an expert in this. He's owned two venues, correct? Is that accurate?
Three, uh,
Three venues.
actually four venues.
Wow.
I currently am a partner in two.
Hmm.
One of them didn't make COVID, and the other one we just sold. So,
Oh wow.
but yeah,
Good for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it actually it couldn't have come at a better time. So
Hmm. So you're running two now. Okay, so not
yeah.
only you're running two now, and you're running one from a distance.
Mm.
Um, what did you have to do to ensure you could run it from a distance without constantly worrying what was happening?
Great partners and great staff. Those are
Okay.
especially great partners. Um, I will state it because it's probably going to affect a few of the questions that you'll ask me, or maybe it won't. I don't do anything floor operations wise. I'm
Okay.
so glad about that because it is the most thankless and unforgiving. Well, I mean, what I do is thankless and unforgiving as well, but in a different way. But I don't put drinks across the bar. I don't schedule bartenders. I don't schedule bouncers. I don't order liquor. I don't do any of that stuff. And I have done that before in bars that I've owned. And I just over time realized that that is not my skill set. My skill
Okay.
set is figuring out ways of putting thirsty people into those bars so that my partners and my managers can figure out how to way to get drinks into them really quickly. So
Mm.
so yeah, it all comes down to I have in Six String, which is my major club, is it's 1,200 capacity, and it's 1,000 feet away from Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play, and we do high volume. Especially when there are home games, all we do is open the door and just get stampeded and try to put Bud Lights in people's hands as quickly as possible. And if that were my purview, I guarantee you I would mess it up. So
Oh,
I'm
really?
glad to I'm glad to have
So
people who now I know the principles behind that, to be fair. I
Sure.
right.
I know I know bar management and bar inventory and all of that stuff because you really have to, no matter what role
Yeah.
you play as an owner or a manager. But my title, so to speak, in the places that I own or that are my clients is entertainment manager. I
So
Yeah,
I wanna unpack that a minute because
sure.
you said a lot of stuff that's really useful. And applies to people that are interested in business, period, not just like bars.
Mm,
So the
Hmm.
first part was about partners, and you talked about how you have really good partners. So I want to ask you about that first. Like, what if someone's looking to start a business and they're going to bring on a partner so that they can have a team like you do, like how do you figure out that you have a good partner before you tie yourself to them, because a partnership's like a marriage. Once
mm.
you're in it, it's hard to get out,
And I've had some
right? I
really
mean,
crappy partners and some messy divorces over time too. So uh, ultimately, it's a gut feeling just as much as it is an evidentiary feeling. If you're just getting started, um, you really should look for a partner who has more experience than you do. If you're experienced, more so, you would probably want to look for a partner who's very, very motivated and can be molded and trained, or some combination there. Um, my current partners are people I've either known or worked with for years, so I know what their strengths and weaknesses are. Um, the operations partners that Six String has, wow, I think we have 7 people in the ownership group of all varying chunks. But operations partner who owns the majority, just enough to be able to outvote us all, which is just fine because he's one of the smartest people I know. Um, he has been running bars and restaurants in Boston for the better part of 30 years. And
Hmm.
I didn't know him very well. I didn't know his whole team very well, but I knew a couple of people on his team for years, and I've watched what they've done. And when the opportunity to take over another bar, which is what was at Six String before we came in, it was Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill, and that was going under. I had been doing some shows there, booking some entertainment there, and I just every time I walked in there, I scratched my head and I said, "This friggin' place is a gold mine." And every time I did a show there, it was packed to the gills, and the managers would come up to me and just hug me and say, "Thank you, Dan. This is one of the best nights we've ever had." And I'm thinking to myself, "How is this one of the best nights they've ever had? This place is a gold mine. It should be packed like this every night." So the to make a long story short, when we put the ownership group together, our partners were suggested to me by one of the capital partners, and the second their name popped up, I was like, "This is kind of a no brainer. I hope he's interested," because he came with a whole team of people from marketing to liquor inventory management, chefs, managers, and a system that was in place, sort of like a hospitality manual, so to
Mm.
speak. And it fits so perfectly with what I and my entertainment partners were looking to do. Um, and we all got in a room together, and we were like, "This is a gold mine. Let's mine it." And everything that I tossed out, this is what I would like to do, including the name. And here's the vibe that I would want. And my partner who plays in a really big touring band, he said, "This is how the production has to be. We have to have a shower in the green room. We have to have an expansive place where bands feel welcome." And
Oh, wow.
to me, that was, like the Blues Brothers moment of God just shining on me. And I started doing backflips because we had the team in place, and it just worked. And the reason it just worked is I think they took a look at what I was doing. They took a look at what a couple of my other partners were doing. I took a look at what they were doing, and we all basically said, "Listen, if we do our jobs correctly, if we do what we say we're going to do on this table, we're going to have a tremendous amount of success." Now I've had partners who came in and basically were full of BS, or partners who came in with more money than I did, um, which kind of puts you in a weird position of being a little bit subservient to somebody who isn't necessarily going to hold their end up, and
Yeah.
things get weird. And there really is no other way to say it. When if somebody who's young and hungry and is looking to get into any business whatsoever, um they they just need to vet the partner. Everybody needs to dump out what their responsibility is going to be on a table or on a piece of paper. Just dump it all out. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what happens if I don't do it. Here's what happens if you don't do it. um and then I also do have to say, attorneys, as much as people poop on attorneys are worth every dime that you pay them, because
Mm.
I've had a couple of partnerships where we did not have anything in writing. We didn't have an operating agreement. And I've had a couple of partnerships where we did have an operating agreement. And it's just been incredibly stimulating because these are things I never thought of. Like, what happens if your partner dies? What happens if you don't make payroll in next month and you have to stroke a check because the employees have to get paid? Who does that? What happens if the other person doesn't have the money? What happens if you don't have the money? What happens if uh, you know if somebody comes along and wants to sell their shares to somebody else? What happens if somebody takes a loan against the shares? Can they do that? Can you who gets put into second or third position? All of these things that I'm just like, man, I just want to book bands. I never thought of any of that stuff, and to have an attorney who came in and thought of all of that stuff, and sure enough, the law of attraction. As soon as you think about something, it happens. Somebody died,
Yeah.
and the fact that we had everything in writing. Here's what happens if somebody dies, and you really don't want some knucklehead kid coming in and just taking over that you don't even know and that you've never heard of, and frankly just wants to run the business like their personal keg party. That can't happen. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, attorneys
Yeah.
worth every dime you pay them.
Wow.
Okay, so um that was a very detailed answer.
Yeah,
So thank
I'm
you for that.
sorry.
No,
But
that's awesome.
like,
Yeah.
No,
yeah, no,
it
but
was awesome.
that's
It
what we
got me
need.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got me thinking too. I'm like, Jillian, we need to rewrite our operating agreement. Here we are, both,
Yeah.
former attorneys, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if our operating agreement was that
Yeah.
detailed. So, um, but yeah, so don't die this week, Jillian.
Yeah. Well,
I
I'll
don't know
work
what
to
to
on
be
it.
do if
fair,
that
I'll
happens.
work.
I have also had some really fantastic partnerships that were just a handshake as well. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
and
bigger the
that's
business gets, the bigger the stakes,
yeah,
then people should really have something in writing, even if it just
Mhm.
winds
right.
up collecting dust in a drawer somewhere and never gets referred to.
But I
Mhm.
think if I were to summarize everything you said,
Yeah.
what you really said is think really carefully about who you partner with, and then be explicit about what happens when and whose responsibilities are what. And that's where the lawyer's coming in for you,
Mm,
is it's adding extra levels of explicit discussion.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
forcing that conversation. It probably doesn't matter what the solution is as
Mm,
much as that you have a plan in place for
yep.
things that may happen in the future.
And
Like what
ultimately,
happens when someone gets divorced or dies or
yeah,
wants to sell,
Yeah.
or we have a capital issue, whatever. Because those
right.
things, because like business is messy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's always something going on that you didn't expect.
And you can be firing on all cylinders, and then suddenly the universe creeps up on you and kicks you right in the you know what.
Right,
Um,
COVID happens,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
Or or you're doing really well and you need to expand, so you
yeah.
need to buy more inventory, you're growing too fast.
Mm,
I mean, it's depending on the type of business you're
yep.
in. Or you have an opportunity to bring in some amazing, musician or something that's gonna, change the trajectory of the thing, and, like, you need to have the resources to
Yeah,
do
but
these things.
you gotta kick the green down in order to make that happen, and the person won't come until the green is paid up front. So
Yeah. Actually, I don't even like, you mentioned, you mentioned some specific musicians, and I'm not gonna mention this particular one by name, but there was a client of mine when I was practicing law that was promoting a show, and he had signed a contract to pay that person, and then he didn't sell enough tickets and didn't have the money to
mm,
pay him, right? Like, he was not a very good
right.
promoter, and he was in the middle of being sued by a big name musician, and he came into my office and he was like, "Hey, can you represent me in this?" And I was like, "You don't have any money." Like,
Yeah.
I don't see myself doing this, but I always kind of wanted to, because I just thought it would be fun to depose that person.
Mm,
But I don't think he would have shown up anyway, because the amount in controversy was a little bit small,
right.
comparatively. But the point is still that it's a complicated business that you're in,
Mm,
right? Like, you're paying money, like you said, up front to bring in a musician, and if you don't sell the tickets or you don't get the people to show up and buy the product, you're out of luck. So,
yeah,
like, how do you handle that side of your business? You're promoting shows from Atlanta now, and they're not in Atlanta.
right. Well, it's I mean, it's definitely a risky business. I have a set of tools that I use that I've developed over time, and some that are sort of industry standard. I mean, there are trade magazines like Polestar that will give you an approximation as to what an artist has done in other markets from people that or clubs that necessarily report to Polestar. um, Up until COVID, all of the major concert promoters, the Live Nations and the AEGs, reported to Polestar. So it was so easy to just say, okay, well, what did the artist do in this market? Okay. But ultimately, it comes down to I listen to Spotify a lot. I pay attention to what an artist has uh, it gets as far as spins on Spotify, on Apple Music. I look at all of their socials and all of their YouTube, and I probably have a network of somewhere in the range of 100, people or so, all around New England, who go to clubs. They're music lovers, and they put up with me asking them, "Hey, how did that show go? Hey, did you see this guy
Oh,
opening up for that guy?"
yeah.
And a lot of them will just, they'll take pictures of the crowd wherever they are, and they'll shoot them over to me. And the other thing now is with Instagram and with Facebook. I mean, I can just creep. Uh, I have so many Facebook friends that are constantly posting about concerts, and oh, where was that? Oh, it's this act. Huh, it looks like there's maybe 500 people in front of them. Scratch my head and go, okay, well, maybe I can work with that. And I've done
Mm,
it for so long. Um, I Not being there is a hindrance to a certain degree, but the other way that I look at it is I wasn't necessarily there when I lived close by, in terms of being able to keep track of, if there's somebody playing in a club across town and I'm working at another club across town, I'm not at that show. So what's the
Hmm.
difference if I'm not at that show in Atlanta or not at that show in Boston? So,
You you know, Jillian, this reminds me a little bit of the, book mastery that we just did in our happy hour,
yeah.
right? Like,
Hmm.
recently, they talked about, like, when you've spent enough time in a certain field and you've put in the time to become a master at it, you see patterns that
mm,
other people wouldn't necessarily see. Like, I certainly wouldn't look at an Instagram post and be like, "Oh, that looks like an opportunity." But what you're really saying is, because of your expertise in the industry, you're able to do things that someone who may be just starting out in the industry wouldn't be able to do. Like my client
mm.
that was getting sued for not being able to fill up a venue with a big name person, and it was a pretty small venue. Um, but that wouldn't happen to you because you've already developed this skill set.
Well, it does happen to me, but I'll take that as a compliment, and run with it. obviously I have a pretty good batting average of keeping my winners big or big enough to be able to afford to have my losers. And um, I operate in a space of, I guess, small to medium capacity. So the guarantees that I'm making tend to be in the low to medium five figures, all the way down to the 500 to 1,000 or $10,000. So if I take a kick in the pants, personally as a promoter, where I'm bankrolling the whole thing, it isn't going to sink the ship.
Mm,
It's going to hurt, but it isn't going to sink the ship. And because, when I'm operating out of clubs where the club is absorbing the loss and I'm just a partner, or in some cases, the club is a client, um, we just try to keep those losses minimal.
Yeah.
And we have lost on quite a few shows, but by the same token, we've never made a guarantee to an artist that would put the business in jeopardy. And
mm,
I've never done that. I've seen other promoters just go belly up by saying, "We're going to do the biggest thing ever. Let's start a music festival," and it costs you $1 million before you even open the doors,
Yeah.
and $800,000 worth of tickets were sold. And who writes that check? I could.
mm.
I have a
So
more. Yeah,
there's real business advice here too, right? Like
yeah,
it applies beyond just your own business.
yeah.
When you're when you're taking these kinds of risks, you're mitigating that risk by protecting your downside.
Yes,
Because you can not make money by if you don't take some risk, but if you take too much risk that it takes you out,
that's
then
correct.
you're never making money again, right? So you're
Yep.
saying, "Hey, I will pass on things that I can't afford the downside risk."
Yeah, and believe me, it hurts sometimes when you have to do that, and you won't grow as hockey stick meteorically as some of the posers on Instagram posing in front of their Ferraris or something like that. But you will also be uh, 30 years into a career, or whatever, 27 years into a career, and still be doing it. By not letting it sink your ship before it even sets sail.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really great advice.
so do you think, Jeff, based on all of this, do you think we can start our own bar now?
Well, maybe we ought to control our downside risk a little bit, Jillian, and bring in some really good partners.
Yeah, there you
Um,
go.
and I know this guy named Dan who might be a great partner with us
Sorry
in
for our
our
tiki
bar.
bar. Yeah.
Yeah, because Jillian. I mean, obviously, you're the pretty face at the bar. I'm the philosopher in the corner, and Dan's going to do all the hard work and bring all the capital, right?
That's it. Of course. The
I
beautiful thing
know.
about
I
a
just
tiki bar is it doesn't cost a whole lot to run it.
No, you don't even need
That's
air
true.
conditioning. You just have it's
Yeah,
like open air, right? So your
that's
energy
perfect.
costs are low. People are on vacation. Oftentimes, you're going to have regulars because every tiki bar
Well,
has its regulars.
yeah,
But
well,
then most people, yeah,
the
go
good
ahead.
part about people being on vacation is they leave. So
Yeah, that's what I
if you
mean.
do a bad job, you can just start with the next one and do a
That's
good
Yeah, and
it.
job
just
with them.
rename the bar and start over, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
I mean, and people don't really write a lot of reviews for tiki bars. Like, I
Mhm.
don't usually like when I'm walking down the beach and I see a tiki bar, I don't get on Yelp and check out if I want to get a drink there. I just go buy the drink.
And,
So
if you
true.
set it up on one of those rolling trailers as well, and you can just walk up
just
and
move it
down,
Uh,
somewhere
so
else.
you don't have to pay
okay.
rent. Then I'm
True
liking this.
story. True story. I did find a tiki bar in St. Thomas on like Google reviews, went to said tiki bar based on said Google reviews. Then I currently have a draft in my TikTok of my review of said tiki bar. So,
Mm.
Jeff, I would humbly disagree with you based on my own lived experience, Jeffrey. So,
Okay. Well, my lived experience is I've never checked the review of a tiki bar and I've never written a review for a tiki bar. But there was one in Aruba once that I thought about writing a review for because it had really good ceviche. And
Oh,
then I was like, I love this ceviche. But then I realized I didn't actually care enough to write the review, so I still didn't feel it. But I apologize to that bar owner if they're watching the show now and going, "I knew he was
Mm.
gonna write the
You know,
review." I
this
just
this 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 podcast is streamed in like 172 countries. So
Mm.
I'm
true.
sure
You can
Aruba is
watch
one
this
of them.
podcast anywhere that they have internet, except for maybe some place like North Korea, but maybe they don't have internet there. I don't know. So, um,
We have something to work for then. So
Yeah, no
crack
but
kidding.
open the North
listen,
Korean market.
and
But
we
yeah, tiki
unfortunately
bar.
we're unfortunately we're gonna have to wrap up here. So Jillian, do you have one last question that you would like to ask Dan? Because Dan, this has been amazing, and I wish we could have more time.
Mm.
Honestly, like this is really great, valuable insights. But Jillian, what one last question would you like to ask Dan before we wrap up?
Dan, based on the guitars behind you, which is your favorite one to play? Is it one up there or is it one that's not hanging on the wall that you have a feeling
It
I hope
is.
it was the double neck, like Richie
with?
Sambora played
Yeah.
on.
It needs two hangers.
Yeah.
The one that is my favorite to play is not hanging on the wall, mainly because I took it in to the guitar store to get cleaned up and adjusted because I'm kind of a wussy and I'm downgrading to lighter strings to save my hands. And anytime you have to downgrade to lighter strings, you have to get your guitar completely set up again. But
Yeah.
it's a Paul Reed Smith, very similar to this one, except it's not a hollow body. I really have a
Okay.
thing for Paul Reed Smith guitars. Derek will understand all of that.
Oh, I bought him a Paul Reed Smith once. He ended up selling
Nice.
that one. Yeah, he ended up selling that one a couple years ago. He plays mostly Shure guitars now.
Ah,
And yeah, so but yeah, I know all about the lower,
well,
lower gauge strings and resetting it all
if
up.
the
But yeah. Uh,
if the rock and roll
awesome.
business ever crashes and burns, I've been moonlighting on the side, teaching little kids how to play guitar and how to rock out in bands. So maybe I'll start up a School of Rock franchise or something like that if
I
the rock and roll.
definitely have no skill set there, but I am in Chattanooga a lot, and I would love to meet up with you in Atlanta because like Atlanta's not too; it's just down the street. So I'd
Man, I
love
would
to
love
do
to put
that.
a face to your name. I would be honored.
Yeah, it would be really great. We should definitely make that happen. Actually, Jillian's coming to Chattanooga in July, so maybe we can all three get
Oh,
together.
maybe. Yeah, we'll figure that out. Awesome. Well,
I'm in.
Jeff, what should we remind people of before we head on out?
We should remind them to live the very best version of their last life ever.